You know, the modern business landscape can feel a lot like trying to scale K2, one of the world's most dangerous mountains. It is treacherous, it's unpredictable, and the stakes are just incredibly high. So the question is, how on earth do you prepare for a climb like that? Well, just how treacherous is it? Get a load of this number: 52%. According to one study, 52% of the companies that were on the Fortune 500 list back in the year 2000, well, they had completely vanished by 2014. Gone. In just 15 years, more than half of the world's biggest corporations just disappeared. That statistic just begs a huge question, right? In a world this volatile, where giants can literally fall that quickly, how does any organization manage to stay afloat, let alone actually thrive? The answer, it turns out, lies in a really powerful shift in how you think about things. You have to start treating your company not just as a business, but as a meticulously planned, high-stakes expedition to a peak just like K2. Okay, so before any big expedition, what do? You have to map the terrain. And for us, that means getting crystal clear on the difference between two words we throw around all the time, often as if they mean the same thing: risk and uncertainty. Let's start with a classic definition. We have to go all the way back to 1921, when an economist named Frank Knight just nailed this distinction. He said risk is something you can measure. You can actually calculate the odds. But uncertainty, that's when the future is so murky that any kind of measurement is just impossible. So here's the bottom line. With risk, you know the possible outcomes, and you have a pretty good idea of the chances of each one happening. But with uncertainty, you are flying completely blind. You can't even begin to put a number on what might happen next. Think about it like this. Risk is like rolling a die. We know there are 6 sides, and each one has a 1 in 6 chance of coming up. Simple. Uncertainty, though, that's like a game of Jenga. We know the tower is going to fall eventually, but we have absolutely no idea which block will be the one to bring it all crashing down. The whole goal of an expeditionary is to turn those Jenga problems into dice problems. So now that we know the terrain, how do you approach it? Well, there are basically 2 ways to go about it, 2 mindsets you can adopt. You can be the adventurer, or you can be the expeditionary. Let's dig into what that means. This quote from the Argentine explorer Alfredo Barragan just perfectly captures the idea. This guy famously built a raft with no rudder just to prove ancient sailors could have crossed the Atlantic, and his point is so profound. An adventurer just kind of wings it, sees what happens. An expeditionary, on the other hand, prepares so thoroughly that they've already accounted for what's coming. Here's a perfect real-life example. In 2012, the actor Facundo Arana tried to climb Mount Everest and had to be evacuated. He was acting like an adventurer. Then, in 2016, he went back. But this time, he worked with a whole team to identify every single possible risk and create a specific plan for each one. And guess what? He reached the summit. He had become an expeditionary. And this really gets to the heart of an idea from Peter Bernstein's amazing book, Against the Gods. The word risk actually comes from an old Italian word, risicare, which means to dare. See, it's not some fate that just happens to us. It's a choice we make. The expeditionary dares, but dares wisely. Okay, so how do you actually become an expeditionary in your own business? It's not about magic. It comes down to a clear, disciplined process. Think of it as a 5-step toolkit for navigating the climb. And the process flows in 5 really logical steps. First, you identify all the potential risks. Second, you define them with total precision. Third, you measure their probability and impact. Fourth, you find their determinants, we'll get to that. And finally, you create a plan to mitigate them. Step 1, identify. Now, this is the most critical step of all, and you can't just outsource it to some consultant. The deep, real knowledge of what can go wrong, that has to come from within your own team. You need to see the whole forest from above, but you also need people on the ground who can see every single tree. Next, you have to define those risks with absolute clarity. A vague label like cybersecurity risk is basically useless. What does that actually mean? Is it a data breach? Is it a ransomware attack that shuts down your whole operation? Each one needs a totally different response, so you have to be super specific in your definition. All right, once a risk is clearly defined, you measure it. A really common way to do this is to plot it on what's called a heat map. You've got the probability of it happening on one side and the potential impact if it does happen on the other. This gives you an instant visual of which risks you need to worry about the most. Now, for step 4, finding the determinants. The source material has this brilliant analogy. Imagine a cup of coffee sitting on a white rug. The risk is a stain, right? But the cup isn't going to just tip over by itself. The determinants are the things that could cause it to spill. The kids running around, someone bumping the table. You have to identify those underlying triggers. And finally, step 5, you mitigate. So once you really understand a risk and its causes, you basically have 3 main choices. You can transfer it. Think buying insurance. You can assume it, which means accepting the risk but having a solid backup plan, or you can just avoid it entirely by deciding not to do the thing that creates the risk in the first place. If you want a masterclass in mitigation, just look at Bakrdi. Back in the late 1950s, the company's leaders saw the political situation in Cuba getting dicey. So, before the government seized all their assets in 1960, they had already moved their trademarks, their secret yeast strains, and their production offshore. They lost their stuff in Cuba, but they saved the entire company. Now that is the expeditionary mindset in action. This brings us to the ultimate goal, the view from the summit, if you will. Because following these steps isn't really about a checklist or a process. It's about building a whole culture of preparedness that runs through the entire organization. The source material uses this great metaphor for this. It's like giving everyone in the company a pair of polarized lenses. You know how with the naked eye you just see the glare on the water? But with polarized sunglasses, you can suddenly see all the fish swimming underneath. A culture of preparedness gives everyone those lenses, to see the risks and also the opportunities that everyone else misses. And this captures the spirit of the whole thing so perfectly. Risk management isn't about being paralyzed by fear, like Charlie Brown, always worrying about the one bad day. It's about having the confidence and the preparation to go all in and seize the opportunities of all the other days, just like Snoopy. So that's the final question to ask yourself. Is your organization playing the part of the adventurer, just crossing its fingers and hoping for the best? Or are you an expeditionary, meticulously prepared and truly ready for the climb? Because in the world we live in today, that choice makes all the difference.